9 astronauts, James McDivitt, David Scott, and Russell Schweikart, today put their spacecraft down in the Atlantic off Grand Turk Island at a minute past noon, precisely on schedule and in precisely the right place. In 10 days, they had completed the most dangerous of all the space missions Americans have flown and made the first test of the vehicle which will land men on the moon.
Report to crew is in good shape.
And as the loudspeaker on the ship just announced to the crew, the astronauts are in good shape. The Recovery 3 helicopter is just over the spacecraft now. That's the main recovery helicopter, the first team. The spacecraft is in the water. In the water, 1 minute after noon in the Atlantic. And there's the helicopter, Recovery 3, piloted by the commander of the helicopter squadron, Commander George Rankin, Jr.
He's going to be with you.
Almost close enough now to jump in there and virtually touch them. See the frogmen on the outside of the craft.
I think the wind has picked up a bit out here. Hatch is swung open. Astronauts have fresh air to breathe for the first time in 10 days. There's somebody coming out. See if we can see through binoculars who it is. One astronaut is sort of took a little stumble into the life raft. He's fine. He's got a yellow life belt around his waist. Oh, now he changed his life raft. I guess the orange one is to drop into when you get out of the hatch, and then you move on to the yellow one to wait to be picked up by the helicopter. You can't see from here which one of the astronauts was the first out. There's the second. And he's out. Asking directions. He looks like he's got two balloons on his. Life raft tipped up on end, but he's fine. He just. One more astronaut still inside the spacecraft, and the frogmen seem to be spending just a moment or two making that orange life raft a bit more stable. Helicopter 54 moving in now and lowering the Billy Pugh net. Now he does. About rolling in. He rolled in. Is that Scott? Scott?
There's a message that's just been relayed here. Aircraft high above trying to talk to the Guadalcanal to pass on a message from the White House to the astronauts when they arrive on the ship. So perhaps we'll have a phone call from President Nixon, or at least a contact and message of congratulations on their safe arrival back after their historic mission.
The first astronaut has been pulled up into Commander Rankin's helicopter. We think that was Colonel Scott. And the basket is coming down to get the next one. Some of the equipment that these helicopters have in them, electronic equipment for their normal work of anti-submarine detection, has been removed to make more room inside for the astronauts and for the homing device, which locked in and directed them to the spacecraft.
They're running a little bit behind their anticipated schedule, about 45 to 46 minutes after splashdown, and we're certainly towards the end of this rescue as far as getting the astronauts aboard.
We are just about at the end of the pickup. Colonel McDivitt is in the helicopter now. All three astronauts are in the helicopter. Scott first, then Schweikert, now McDivitt. And the helicopter will be coming back to the deck for the welcome ceremony.
And here's Colonel McDivitt, first man out. Schweikert and Scott near them. Ben James, the NASA Public Affairs Officer, at the foot of the stairway. Astronauts are coming out now and chatting with James. They look pretty well. Dr. Jernigan behind them. Taylor's following, yelling. Putting them on, though. They're all looking pretty good shape. Smiling, happy, some beard. They're being asked now to step up and say a few words as Jim McDivitt. All caps on. And it says, Guadalcanal, astronaut.
Well, it's certainly been a long time since we left land. And obviously I don't have my sea legs or my land legs either. But it's sure good to be back. Matter of fact, I think you guys kept us here on the Guadalcanal, kept us going the last few days. We heard you had a big cake here, and every night when we were eating our evening meal, we discussed how much of the cake we're going to eat. As a matter of fact, I don't think we ate very much the last couple of days just getting ready for it. We've had a real good time, and I hope we accomplished something worthwhile. The whole space program is made up of just thousands of people. We're just a very small part of it. And you guys are really a number one for us. Thanks to everybody who's helped.
Lieutenant General Samuel Phillips, manager of the Apollo program, said that a decision will be made on March 24th about the next Apollo flight, whether it will orbit the moon only or attempt to land men on the moon. He said he still feels strongly that one more preliminary mission is necessary.
The Huntley Brinkley Report is produced by NBC News and brought to you in color by Holiday Inns of America. There are now 1,000 Holiday Inns. Truly, the nation's innkeeper.
Whatever your day is like, stop at a Holiday Inn where you're number one. Holiday Inn means number one service at a sensible price. Free ice, free TV, swimming pool, and a number one restaurant. So relax at a Holiday Inn where you're number one.
I'd like you to meet a handsome family. This is Millie, our pride and joy. And these are her two sons. What characters. You know, I've brought up a lot of dogs, and I'm often asked about feeding. Everybody knows dogs need meat. Alpo is 100% meat, and that's why so many veterinarians recommend Alpo. Other dog foods know meat is important, too. That's why so many of them use words like meaty flavor or beefy or meat flavored. But actually, most dog foods are mainly cereal. That's right, mainly cereal. Some up to 70% cereal. Not Alpo. Alpo is 100% meat, not a speck of cereal. Here, Millie. Ladies first. My dogs like all 6 kinds. Alpo beef, chicken, horse meat, liver, lamb, and veal. They cost a little more, naturally. Meat costs more than cereal. See what happens to your dog when you switch him to Alpo.
After an 8-month stalemate and turning back all efforts to modify it and set conditions on United States participation, the Senate today ratified the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Under its terms, the United States, Soviet Union, and Britain agree to give or sell their nuclear weapons to no other country. And 85 non-nuclear nations which have signed the pact give up all rights to produce or acquire nuclear weapons. Another provision of the document commits this country and Soviet Russia to earnest disarmament negotiations. When the treaty had been ratified, Senator Fulbright, chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, said he can't believe that President Nixon, in the face of the vote, will proceed to set up an anti-ballistic missile system. The president's decision on deployment of a system is expected tomorrow during Mr. Nixon's news conference at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time to be carried on this network. The President and Defense Secretary Laird talked over the issue today, while the Senate continued to choose sides on the matter. NBC News correspondent Robert Goralski reports from Washington on the ABM debate.
Defense Secretary Laird, just back from Vietnam, gave the President his recommendations on what to do about the war. What they are hasn't been revealed. They also discussed the controversial Sentinel ABM. Mr. Nixon has given no indication of what he'll do about the anti-missile system, but Secretary Laird said last night he thinks the President will go along with a modified plan. Opposition to the ABM has been building up in Congress, and Mr. Nixon may be forced to delay going ahead on ABM, although endorsing the system in principle. A further indication of mounting sentiment against ABM came today when 4 Republican freshman senators expressed their views. Normally, one would expect the new legislators to wait until their president and party leader had announced his decision.
We have concluded that the case for deployment of the Sentinel has not been made, and while we favor continued research and development, we urge you, Mr. President, not to deploy it at this time.
My position is based primarily on the fact that I don't believe that it will work. I believe that it's a exorbitant expenditure for a questionable purpose, and that certainly we should continue our research in this area, but that we shouldn't expect to set up something which is not going to be effective.
Today, by escalating the debate on the ABM, we hope to de-escalate the arms race. And we believe at this moment in history there is a maximum opportunity to work for peace at a minimum military risk to our country. I think you might well say that this statement today is a matter of conscience, that we feel it's a rather critical time in our history, and even though we're first-term senators, we feel our duty and obligation to speak out, and that's what we're doing.
The Senate Disarmament Subcommittee has been criticized for not hearing from more advocates of the ABM system. Committee Chairman Albert Gore explained that Pentagon officials will testify later. 3 university professors who were against ABM appeared before the committee today. It's been argued that a thin defensive shield is needed as protection against an irrational Chinese government.
There remains this feeling that somehow or other the Chinese are different, that they don't mind losing 50 million people, or you hear this ordinary thing, there's a different concept of life in the Far East, and the assumption is from that, or the conclusion, that they would do this irrational thing.
I've been most impressed at the way in which the Chinese Communist leadership has avoided taking risks under situations which would have seemed to compel them to gamble away half their nation's population. In 1950, when President Truman announced that we were placing the 7th Fleet between the Chinese nationalists and the Chinese communist forces in the Taiwan Strait, it was an act of perhaps unprecedented boldness and daring. Intervening in a civil war is a very risky thing for any country to do, particularly when the side you're intervening against has been victorious up to that point. And yet, obviously, for the last 19 years, the leadership in Peking has been loath to risk any Chinese lives in pursuit of its objectives against the Chinese nationalists, either in the case of the offshore islands of Quemoy and Matsu, right off the mainland, or against Taiwan itself, 100 miles off the mainland. I think their actions, in other words, refute this assumption that they care little about the consequences to Chinese lives.
And so the stage is set for Decision Day tomorrow. It should be pointed out that in the 3 days of committee hearings on ABM, not a single senator appeared here to speak up in favor of the system. There are congressional advocates, of course, but they never appeared in this committee room. It does point out, though, that if President Nixon does give the go-ahead for deployment of the ABM tomorrow, he may find that Congress will not appropriate the necessary funds. Robert Goralski, NBC News on Capitol Hill.
Today's session of the Paris talks on Vietnam lasted 4 hours and 40 minutes, but there was no progress. A Viet Cong spokesman issued a defiant statement in response to President Nixon's threat to respond to the communist offensive. The VC representative said, in effect, the other side's attacks will continue until the Americans are driven out. Another meeting was scheduled for next Thursday. NBC News correspondent Richard Harkness reports from Washington that the Joint Chiefs of Staff are divided on the issue of resumed bombing of North Vietnam. Air Force Chief of Staff McConnell for it, and Army Chief of Staff Westmoreland opposing it. Casualties on both sides fell off during the second week of the enemy offensive. Last week, 336 Americans and 259 South Vietnamese were killed. Enemy dead were estimated at 4,063. Again, this current enemy offensive in Vietnam has cost the Saigon government control over people and villages. An estimated 350,000 people are newly outside the limits of Saigon's protection. But pacification efforts continue, including the holding of village elections. NBC News correspondent Richard Hunt reports on an election in An Phu Dong, near Saigon.
In the village of An Phu Dong, near Saigon in Gia Dinh province, the voters were out early on Sunday morning. The compound at the village school was crowded when the polls opened at 8 o'clock. The government has been trying to get a heavy turnout at these elections, and it's quite possible that the voters were under some pressure to come. This polling place was well guarded. The Viet Cong have denounced the elections, and enemy units had been seen in this area. But so far, there has been no pattern of attacks on election centers. In the past, the Viet Cong have preferred to wait, then kill or kidnap the winning candidates. Each voter was required to show his identity card and obtain a voting card. Most of the 1,400 voters in this village of 3,500 were women or elderly men. The young men of South Vietnam have been drafted into the army, or they're fighting with the Viet Cong. Each voter was given 10 paper ballots, one for each of the 10 candidates running for 8 seats on the village council. Inside a curtained booth, the voter threw away 2 ballots and put the remaining 8 in an envelope.
These ballots are no guarantee that popular democracy has suddenly sprung to life in South Vietnam, but they are at least an encouraging sign. The candidates are willing to run. In the last 6 months of last year, the Viet Cong killed or kidnapped local officials at a rate of more than 1 a day. Few people wanted the jobs. Richard Hunt, NBC News, An Phu Dong, South Vietnam.
Which hand? Here, a cigarette with good, rich flavor. Here, one that's lower in tar than the best-selling Filter King.
It's so hard to choose.
Don't. Now, one cigarette, Pall Mall Gold 100s, gives you both. Newest U.S. government figures show Pall Mall Gold 100s now lower in tar than the best-selling Filter King. Yes, it's longer than king size, yet lower in tar than the best-selling Filter King. Pall Mall Gold. Pall Mall Menthol, too.
Come to the coolest part of the forest and discover the cigarette that tastes extra cool, extra mild. Pall Mall Menthol 100s, extra cool, extra mild. Extra long at both ends, an extra length of cool-tasting tobacco, an extra long filter to smoke milder. Puff for puff, milder than ever. Pall Mall quality with menthol.
The Huntley Brinkley Report continues, brought to you by Digel, the extra-action antacid for more complete indigestion relief. Pleasant-tasting tablets or liquid.
Baby's upset tummy and yours have a lot in common. It's a well-known medical fact that eating too much or too fast can cause pressure and gas. Here's the best solution for baby. For you, Digel, the extra action antacid. Digel not only neutralizes excess acid, it has the extra action of simethicone that breaks up bubbles of gas. Helps you feel better fast. When you eat too well, demand Digel.
The Egyptians and the Israelis fired at each other across the Suez Canal today for almost 3 hours. It was the 4th artillery duel in 6 days, and each side accused the other of starting it. The Egyptians said they shot down 2 Israeli helicopters. The Israelis said they set fire to 4 more Egyptian oil tanks, and each side denied the other's claims. In Coronado, California, Commander Lloyd Booker made a last statement. His lawyer made a last statement, too, and then the Navy's Court of Inquiry into the seizure of the Pueblo adjourned. NBC News correspondent Charles Quinn reports.
In his final statement to the court, Commander Lloyd Booker offered one critical point, that the reason he handed over the Pueblo to the North Koreans was that the Pueblo did not have the power to resist. Booker has been warned that he faces a possible court-martial for violating a Navy regulation which forbids a commander from surrendering his ship while he still has the power to resist. Booker's civilian lawyer, E. Miles Harvey, summed it up. Harvey recalled that the Pueblo was outgunned, outmanned, surrounded by 6 faster ships with MiGs flying overhead, that the ship had been hit by cannon and machine gun fire, that several crewmen had been wounded, one mortally. Harvey told the court that to have fought back with the Pueblo's 250 caliber machine guns would have been suicide, the ordering of men to their deaths. Harvey also said it was tragic that the United States, supposedly the most powerful nation in the world, did not resist the seizure of the ship, that neither air nor surface forces were sent to rescue the Pueblo or to destroy it. The 5-Admiral Court will now begin preparing its recommendations. It can suggest anything from a general court-martial to medals for the crew. The court expects to take about 10 days to prepare the report. It cannot punish anyone, but only make recommendations. Those recommendations will be forwarded through the Navy to the Defense Department and probably all the way up to the President of the United States. Finally, after nearly 8 weeks since the inquiry began, Booker left for the last time.
Commander, are you optimistic now about the outcome of the entire affair?
Well, I'd rather not say that I was optimistic. I will wait with considerable apprehension as to the final determination of the court.
Is your hope to go back to active duty just as was stated in the session just now?
Yes, it is.
Little was made today of the code of conduct of confessions by Booker and other crewmen. Booker did say he thought the code requiring prisoners to give only name, rank, serial number, and date of birth should be reviewed. The code was difficult to reconcile, he said, when threats to the lives of fellow prisoners were involved. Besides fixing blame, one of the central issues the court must resolve is whether Booker was right in giving up the ship without a fight to save the lives of his crew. And then the court must decide, in effect, whether the resulting damage to the nation's security and to its honor was too high a price to pay for the lives Booker saved. Charles Quinn, NBC News, Coronado, California.
The Nashville Tennessean reported today that James Earl Ray told police officials after sentencing that he was sorry he pleaded guilty to shooting Reverend Martin Luther King and wished he could get a new lawyer. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch quoted Ray's brother as saying the confessed killer told him he was not alone in the shooting. Ray was sentenced to 99 years in prison. A Senate subcommittee continued hearings today on mine safety. Dr. I.E. Buff, a leader in the move to compensate West Virginia coal miners for black lung disease, testified that there is a need for federal legislation.
And in the last fight with the legislature in order to get a compensation law, and I'd like to hesitate here a minute and show you what happened in Charleston. The legislators wore the white hat when they talked to the miners, and they said, "We're for you." They went into committee, and they put the black hat on of the coal operator. That's exactly how they voted. They tore this law to pieces. When they came out, they said, "I tried, but I couldn't do anything." This is the method that was used in the 18th, 19th century to mine coal. Our production methods are the 21st century, but the coal miner's health is still of this period. It has not changed. But what we need is a rigid health and safety act with 100% enforcement.
Can the right denture cleanser really make a difference? Just listen to Mrs. Wilma Felder, a denture wearer.
There really is a difference. I feel so confident and so sure of myself now that I know my dentures are really clean and odor-free, thanks to Polident tablets.
Polident, a revolutionary tablet that really fights denture stain and odor with an exclusive combination of active cleansing ingredients and effervescing oxygen action. See this bar of denture material? It's covered with a tough food stain. Drop it into warm water with a Polident effervescent tablet, and instantly, the power-packed oxygen whiteners start to clean. Scrub stain and odors safely away. In only minutes, your dentures are cleaner, brighter, fresher. Polident tablets really make a difference.
And now, a special offer. Get this all-new denture bath, free in either economy or giant-size Polident tablets.
Prices fell today on the New York Stock Exchange. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 10 1/3 points, and the value of an average share of common stock decreased 34 cents. The town of Podunk Center is in Iowa. It isn't on any maps, and it doesn't even have a zip code, and it has been a staple in the routines of comics and traveling salesmen for years. But now it's for sale, all of it. NBC News correspondent John Dancy reports from WHO-TV, Des Moines.
Once upon a time, there was a farmer who had an acre of land about 40 miles from nowhere in the middle of Iowa. It was called Podunk Center, and all the city slickers laughed and made jokes about anybody who would live in Podunk. One day, the farmer, whose name is Homer Weeks, decided to sell Podunk Center and its gas station and 3-unit motel. All the city slickers thought it would be great fun to own a place called Podunk Center, and so they began competing to buy it. A radio station in San Diego wanted to buy it and give it away. One real estate broker said he would top any offer. So far, the city slickers have bid the price up to $8,000. The average price of an acre around Podunk Center is $400. The city slickers think Podunk Center is a funny name, and they laugh a lot. The farmer laughs a lot, too. John Dancy, NBC News, reporting.
Good night from NBC News.
Black & Decker, take your choice. Here's a sale so fine. Black & Decker, take your choice for $19.99. You can have a drill, drive a screw, drill a hole, accelerator, trigger. Black & Decker, take your choice. 3 power tools so fine. Black & Decker, take your choice for $19.99. 2-speed jigsaw, cut 'em down, cut 'em out. 7 saws in one. Hey, hey, hey. Black & Decker, take your choice. 3 power tools so fine. Black & Decker, take your choice for $19.99. You can have a sander, sand 'em down, sander smooth. Power does it better. Sander, jigsaw, accelerating drill, each $19.99. Sander, jigsaw, accelerating.
Produced by NBC News, which is solely responsible for its content.